My father was a shepherd, his father was a shepherd, and as far as I'm aware, his father was a shepherd. So that's the generation of shepherds. And as a young lad, he went to Yetholm Show with my grandfather, and it was all about showing sheep then. It wasn't about the dog trials. The dog trial actually came about by default. They were showing sheep at St James's Fair at Kelso, and there happened to be a dog trial on that day. My father ran his dog, Moss, and actually won the Open and the Juniors, so he was highly delighted. His interest in local trials was before wartime, and he used to do quite a lot of the local trials. After the wartime, he was at Thornington, and Miss Briggs had said to my father, had he never thought about going further afield when he had won so many local trials? And he hadn't really thought about it. So she actually said to him she would hire a taxi for him if he'd like to take someone with him, which was Alan Rogerson, and they went to their first national trial. But after being at these national trials, which are different from local trials, he had learned quite a lot and really noted what was needed for trialling. From there, he competed very, very successfully throughout his lifetime at English Shepherds Championships, international championships.
Bob would be at the trial, and if he wasn't on early, he would be watching every run. He knew which way the sheep were lying and which way they were going to run, and he was a great reader, what we call in the trial system, a great reader of sheep. He knew at a pen by sheep's ears with a twitching whether they were going to go into the pen. Bob, when he was handling his dogs, he knew exactly when to put pressure on the sheep. Some people put pressure on at the wrong time and the sheep just split and go all over the place, but by golly, I can never remember Bob having a bad run.
Even on his last day of trialling, he had said to the judge, "Remember, it's the dog you're judging, not the man." All his working life, he's needed good dogs to work the farms that he has worked on. He wanted a dog that could do any job of work on the farm that you asked for it. That was what he bred for. The type of dog that he liked was nice black and white with nice conformation, but you don't always get that. You take what you get, but if they can do the job of work, that is the most important thing that you can get.
He had a line which he developed over many, many years, and he didn't breed for trial dogs. First and foremost, he wanted work dogs. If they were no good for everyday work, never got a chance on a trial field, but he never had many of them kind because he paid particular attention to his breeding.
One of his first litters, I think, that he got was from Davy Murray's sweep. He took one of his bitches to his dog, and that started him off on his breeding line. He's had the same breeding line since 1923 to his death, all direct descendants from that first dog, Moss. He always had a waiting list for puppies. When everybody wanted a pup, he just added them to the waiting list. I know of dogs that went to Canada, the Argentine, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, to name but a few. And there was more tears in our house with dogs moving on than I care to remember. It was a very sad time when puppies went away, when dogs went away. I can still remember the day that Will went away to Canada, and it was very sad.
A lot of people think you can buy an expensive good dog, pay the earth for it, and it's like a car. You switch the switch on and it goes. That's not the way. You've got to get a dog that fits your temperament. Some people need a strong dog because they talk strongly or they arbit strongly. Other ones will just run dogs with a whisper. which they need a quiet dog. And Bob was never a noisy handler.
A father was never harsh with his dogs. He was fair and kind. He always said, if you can't control yourself, you'll never control your dog. And I think he passed that information on to his young students, and I think that still stands.
He used to go around the farms, you see, if they had a young shepherd boy that wanted instruction, he would go, and then he would have maybe a class, but he wouldn't take too big a class, just 4 or 5 at a time, so as he could give them all proper attention.
The tradition of shepherding seems to be carrying on. My grandson turned out this year to be runner-up in the Young Scottish Shepherd of the Year, and he's now starting to train his own dogs.
One man and his dog was the brainchild of Philip Gilbert, and he was a local lad who was a producer with the BBC, and he was on holiday, and he wandered along to Glanton and had a look at the trials, you see, and he was so amazed at the trials, he said to Bob, I wonder if we could make a film of this. And they said, well, why not, you see, and Philip did get BBC on board, and they made a film. After One Man and His Dog started, John Metcalfe was an agricultural merchant, and he approached Bob first and then myself and said, could we not have something like that in Northumberland, you see? And of course then we had he was very keen. He says, I'll sponsor it, you see. So we called 1 or 2 together in the Queen's Head at Alnwick, and that's how the Northumberland League Sheepdog Trials started. And he was a secretary for quite a number of years. And then we thought, well, right, we've got this league going. It was the first in the country. And the international sheepdog system for qualification is something similar. It's on league points in open trials.
On his last day, when he collapsed and died in the trial feed at Wharton, Rothbury, was a very sad day. When he died, the dog just lay down by his side, and my mother thought it quite appropriate and said, well, he died as he lived. On that last day, he actually gained 3rd place.
Bob had a goodish trial. I think he was placed in that trial. I wasn't actually there. And what a shock it was when we come back and said that Bob had gone. But I'm sure that's the way all of us would want to go, rather than lying, suffering and well, he couldn't have done it, because even when he retired at Wooler, he was out with his dogs every day. You know, great man in the passing and a great handler right to the end.